So let's talk about a piece of technology that you use literally every single day, every time you browse the web, but you might not even know its name. It's called CSS, and it did way more than just make websites look good. It actually solved a gigantic, expensive problem that almost broke the early internet.
I want you to picture this for a second. You're building a 100-story skyscraper, but instead of having a blueprint for the design, you have to go into every single room, one by one, and say, okay, this wall is beige, this door handle is brass, this carpet is gray, for thousands of rooms. That is exactly what building a website used to be like. It was pure chaos.
And to really understand why it was so chaotic, we have to look at the web's most basic building block, HTML, and the serious identity crisis it was going through. See, HTML, that's hypertext markup language, it was designed for one very specific job, to give structure to content. It was all about meaning. A tag like H1 meant, hey, this is the most important headline on the page. A P tag meant, this is just a regular paragraph. It was describing what something was, not what it looked like.
And this is the absolute key to the whole story. HTML was never, ever built to handle visual design. Things like colors, fonts, spacing, layout, that wasn't its job. You can think of HTML as a librarian, organizing the information, not as an interior designer picking out the drapes.
But, as the web got popular, people wanted their sites to look cool. So they started shoving new tags into HTML to control the design, like the infamous font tag. And that, as one developer put it, is when the nightmare truly began. All of a sudden, our librarian was being forced to choose furniture and paint colors, and it got really, really messy.
And this mess wasn't just ugly, it had real-world consequences. It was incredibly expensive. Think about our skyscraper again. If you wanted to change the color of all the headlines on your 100-page website, you had to manually open 100 different files and change the code, over and over and over. It made building and maintaining websites a slow, painful, and very costly process.
So, the web had a serious problem on its hands, and to fix it, this group called the World Wide Web Consortium, we just call them the W3C, they basically sent in a hero, and that hero was CSS.
CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets, and its entire purpose was to fix HTML's identity crisis. It created this beautiful separation of powers. HTML could go back to doing what it does best, structuring the content, while CSS would now be in charge of everything related to visual style.
So, what was a superpower? What made CSS so revolutionary? Well, it all comes down to this number, 1. For the first time, you could control the look and feel of your entire massive website by editing just one single file. The nightmare was over. It was a complete game changer.
Okay, so now that we know why CSS had to be invented, let's pull back the curtain and see how it actually works. We're going to learn the basic language of web design.
So what does this code actually look like? Is it super complicated? You might be surprised. It's actually really straightforward once you see the basic pattern.
Pretty much every single instruction you can write in CSS follows this exact same structure. There are just two parts, a selector, which is your target, and a declaration, which is the command.
The selector is just what? What do you want to change? It selects the piece of HTML you want to style. So if you want to make all your main headlines look different, your selector is simply H1. If you want to change all your paragraphs, it's P. Easy enough, right? And then you have the declaration block. It's always inside those curly braces, and it's the how. This is where you write the list of instructions for what you want to do to your target. And that declaration block is just made up of these simple little pairs. You have a property, which is the thing you want to change, like color or font size, and you have a value, which is how you want to change it, like blue or 12 pixels. And that's pretty much it, a selector and a bunch of property value pairs. That's the core of CSS.
All right, so we've got the grammar down. Now let's talk about putting it into practice. Turns out there are 3 main ways you can actually apply these style rules to a web page.
Those 3 methods are external, internal, and inline. And each one is used for a very different situation. So knowing which one to pick is really important. First up, an external style sheet. This is that magical one file to rule them all we were talking about. It's a completely separate .css file that every single page on your website links to, perfect for your site's overall look. Then you have an internal style sheet. This lives inside the code of a single HTML page and only affects that one page. It's great if you have, say, a special promotional page that needs to look totally unique. And finally, we have inline style. This is where you apply a style directly to one single HTML element. Now, you really want to use this one sparingly. Why? Because you're putting style information right back into your HTML file. You're mixing the content in the presentation all over again, which is the exact problem CSS was invented to solve in the first place.
Okay, this brings us to the final and maybe the most brilliant piece of the puzzle. What does that C in CSS actually stand for? Cascading. It's all about what happens when your styles have a disagreement.
So let's imagine a classic conflict. What happens if you have more than one CSS rule trying to style the exact same thing on your page? Who wins the fight?
Here's the perfect showdown. Let's say your main external style sheet, the one for your whole website, says all H1 headlines should be navy blue. But on one specific page, you also have an internal style sheet that says the H1 on that page should be orange. So, which color do you actually see?
This is where the cascade comes in. The browser follows a really strict order of priority to solve these fights. As you can see, an inline style, the one that's physically attached to the element, always wins. It has the highest priority. After that, you have internal and external style sheets. And finally, the browser's own default styles have the lowest priority. So in our navy versus orange fight, the browser sees that the internal style is more specific. It's closer to the element than the general external file, so orange wins.
So in the end, CSS did so much more than just add pretty colors to the web. It brought order to chaos. It introduced logic and efficiency. This idea of separating content from style is what allowed the web to scale, to become professional, and really to survive. It saved the web from becoming an unmanageable, expensive mess. And that just leaves us with one last question to think about. What's the next big chaos in web design that's waiting for its hero?